All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Thank you so much for showing up to the Provoke Coach podcast. Hey, look, when we started this podcast almost a year ago, we said, hey, look, we're going to find these peak performers, these people that are kicking absolute tail in their life, but also providing value back to the world. So I have a fellow coach with us today, Coach Frank Sagasta. Thank you so much for showing up to the Provoke Coach podcast.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for the invite. I appreciate that. Definitely.
Absolutely, man. And you and I got to share the stage a little bit with an awesome event that we really kind of kicked off, Unleash Your Greatness event, which we were amongst some valuable speakers that were just speaking the truth. But when I heard your story, man, I couldn't help but to reach out and be like, oh my God, I gotta have this guy on. Not only am I inquisitive, about you and your story and your background, because I think when you're watching somebody on social media, you don't get everything until that person really tells you who and where you came from, right? So if you could kind of, tell your story and really, kind of take us from obviously the beginning and whatever that was all the way till now. But what I guess I would be most interested in hearing about right now is who are you right now in the current day that we live
in? So for those who are watching and viewing and listening, my name is Coach Frank Sagasta, educational leader of the great state of Arizona, District 5. And my story begins in Riverside, California, where I grew up, born and raised with a single parent. Nonetheless, I went through some very emotional times, both mentally and physically and spiritually, going through these things that a lot of kids today are going through.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, I was sexually abused by a man who lived across the street for a number of years, all through elementary. And then I was taken from my mother at a very young age, right in the beginning of junior high, bounced around from in and out of foster homes as a runaway, and eventually placed into an all-boys orphanage. So from 1994, again, fast forward from 1994 all the way to 1998 when I graduated high school, finished up junior high and finished up high school there. I didn't know where I was going to go. I had no inclination, no contact with family, none of that kind of stuff. So, it was a different outlook for me, graduating from high school and not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So you might say that might have been the perfect seed of where I'm at today. And I'm not going to give away what I do today yet, though I did earlier introducing myself. But nonetheless, it was at that point, being homeless and living on my best friend's couch, not knowing exactly what I was going to do. My half brother found me, brought me out to Arizona, and from 1999 all the way up till this present time, living here in this community has been a wonderful gift, a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful blessing to give back. For the time that I started here, though, I can honestly say even from the time that I came out the canal, no purpose, no idea of exactly where I was going when I came out the canal, till I want to say it was 2015 where I was sitting in my office, literally depressed, living the multiple lives. And for those that don't understand that actual definition is when you take off one mask and you put a different mask, you put on a different mask, living all these different lives.
Yeah.
And so I had to put on only one mask. And that was it, brother, where I got on YouTube, and I was, like I said, I was a little depressed on where I was at in life. And I was a young coach, sports coach. And so I literally went on YouTube, found this guy by the name of Eric Thomas, and said in stone and out to the universe, I'm going to meet this individual. He's going to be my coach. He's going to be my mentor. And for 5 genuine years, that's exactly what I did. And I stood by him and listened to everything he was spoon feeding me, and as well as the other pupil. So it was a great opportunity. And now today I'm living, a wonderful life, a fabulous life where I'm definitely, I know what it takes, again, to really remove myself from any distraction, remove myself from, I guess the monotony of life. Does that make sense? Like the average minded individual. I get that now and I understand that. And so over the course of 7 years, I've been waking up at 3 a.m., educating myself and doing what I absolutely need to do to keep my mind sharp. And my phrase in our home is keep, sharpen your mind, you shape your future.
Yeah.
If anybody, you can't teach everybody to learn, but we know that, again, in this field, that if you do not choose to learn anything, then you're doomed to continue to wander this earth aimlessly. It's amazing, brother. So yeah, that's where I'm at today.
Awesome, man. What, I have so many questions, first of all, but I appreciate that because, a lot of times, we see people in the light of social media and we don't know where they came from. We don't know what obstacles that they've had to overcome, throughout that. Now, for your business right now, let's talk about that for a second. Obviously we'll get into background, we'll get into, the past, but we're, present day. What do you see? And then I guess for the future, for your business and for your company and for you and your family in your future, where do you see it?
So for right now, we had shut down in 2020. 2019 was our I'd say in the middle of 2018, we opened up Coaching Beyond, which was a mentor, leadership development training course. And then about 2020, it was about the first 2 months of 2020, we had to shut it all down. It just, we weren't getting any traction. Everything took the biggest dive, and not just for me, but for a lot of people. And my heart goes out to all of them. I get it. I understand. But for those people who were that had a lot of traction, that had this wonderful anchor, and they just buckered down and it kept on going, my hat's off to you. But for me and my family and what I was doing already in the education field, it was difficult. It was very difficult, and dealing with all the things. So, when I look at the vision today, I could say that after this next year, going into 2022, we do have a vision of revamping Coaching Beyond and adding some different content onto different places, different platforms, and just get some of that residual income. And again, we're not looking to be multi-billionaires and millionaires. That was the beginning vision. Yeah, and I definitely remember that chasing the paper. But now, now today, over the last 5 years, it's more about chasing people.
Yeah.
And there's more people that desperate again. And I'm not putting a number on people. When I chase people, it's a different value than what is on return when it comes to capital.
Well, and so, I guess let's talk about that for a second, because, that's interesting that you said that, Coach, because, oftentimes when people are in business, and hey, look, that's why people have businesses. That's why entrepreneurs get into business. Typically, it's to make money, create profit, right? And, look, or you're a nonprofit, and then I guess it's all vision, but really it still boils down to performance.
That's right.
Right. It still, boils down to that. But you're right. When you're chasing people, things become differently, because I started to do that quite a bit, to where instead of, because I was in sales my entire adult career, made a shift to service. And, things started to change for me, because instead of me trying to get money out of your pocket without going to jail and being unethical, I was trying to get you to do better things for your life. So I want you to talk about that for a second, because not everybody can be a coach. What about being a coach is like your driving force?
Well, there are some areas that you have to have. Number one, you have to have great character. When we think about leadership, there's a strong foundation. Being a part of John Maxwell, being a part of Eric Thomas, being a part of these great gurus. I had to ask the right questions, and the right questions were go back to the foundation, Sagasta. Go search out the foundation, and when you search for it like if it's hidden treasure. And so, as I mentioned earlier, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, understanding and dissecting Aristotle and Socrates and Plato and Marcus Aurelius, just learning these principles and applying them. I understood that leadership, that coaching has a strong foundation, and without a foundation, everything falls. And so that foundation starts with character. And if you don't have a strong character, a shaky character, then guess what? Your whole foundation, everything comes to crumble. So having strong character, having strong integrity, having strong self-awareness, having a strong, a strong commitment to, again, the vision or the purpose of life. And then last but not least is, saying absolutely, what's the word? Committed.
Yeah.
Staying committed to it. So
Right.
I work within that foundation very much when I think about coaches, because again, when you look at the word coach, it's taking people from point A to point Z, not point B. You take
Yep.
them for the long haul, and the times where I've been coached, it's always been, okay, I met you for 2 years, I coached you for 3 years, I coached you for 4 years, and that was it.
Yeah.
For me, again, it's all about watching the transformation and making sure it sticks.
Well, and you're right. I mean, getting to the destination, because you're absolutely right. I mean, as a coach, your job is to get to win the game, but to get through the voluntary cooperation of the players,
Yeah,
because you're the
yeah,
coach. You can't run the game for them. You can't throw the helmet on. You can't get out on the field. Can't grab the
no,
ball. Here, let me show you how to do it. Sure, you can show them, right? But really leading them to that. That's funny that you said that, because you're right. It's not point A to point B, then to point C, because it's got to be the destination.
yes.
That is the ultimate goal. So I guess, do you take that same methodology to other various parts of your life? Do you do that with
Mhm.
your relationships? Do you do that with your family? Do you do that with your home life as well? Is it about that destination?
It's all about the destination for our two boys that are serving in the military.
Yeah.
It's always been about, giving them the absolute principles, a passion again for striving. And, my son's going to college and living in San Diego, a very, very expensive place. And, like I've always expressed the children in our home, a great coach cannot be a great coach outside, an extraordinary coach outside, if he can't, again, dominate
Mm.
in his own castle. If
Yeah.
he can't dominate in his own, if he or she cannot dominate in their own castle, then what expectation do I have? What standard can you really display? Again, that mask situation. You can put on the mask, but again, as I've learned, I'm going to be very judgmental, because everything that I've learned, this accumulation of information that I've learned and applied, I'm going to be able to judge it. And if I
Yeah.
see you doing things that are opposite or contrary to what the word coach or leader is, I'm going to say something. I'm
Yeah.
going, and it might not be, again, it might not be, what do you call it? It might be offensive. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And that's reality, though. But I mean, when you go back all the way to the ground roots, that's how they were back then. They didn't, there was a cutthroat situation. When you go back to the Roman era, or when you go back even further than that, you find individuals where they spoke out, and they spoke out with this eloquence, this authenticity of character when they spoke. And again,
Yeah.
people heard, people moved. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there's a different thing. So if your house is not moving in the right vision, in the right direction, then how can you make somebody else's house move in the right direction?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important for people to understand that, because it takes a while to grasp that. And I think that it's just such a daily grind in the household,
Oh
as
yeah.
you know.
Oh yeah.
Because why? Because there's love, there's
Oh
emotion.
yeah.
It's your safe place. Your home is your safe place. So
Yep.
to
Yep.
treat it like more like a business, I mean, that's some things that I've been learning lately, is to disengage from the outcome, separate the emotion, right? Let the ego go a little bit. And those are those are business type practices, to make sure that your profitability, to make sure that you don't allow your emotions to change the company. How, how, I guess, do you cope with that as a coach? Because
Hmm.
you and I are, we have a lot of people that follow us that are also coaches. I'd like to help them out as well. And I know I
Yeah.
struggle with it sometimes. Where's the separating factor, or is there different principles that lie?
Well, for us, it's principles over feelings. And
Yeah.
over the last 3 years, it's really been ground and pound, principles over feelings. And even when I'm at work, I always express that with even colleagues, teachers. You guys step out of your feelings. And again, they're not accustomed to that. They're not used to that kind of I guess of spoken words or that definition. They're not used to somebody saying that to them because they've never been again, they've never been taught. No professor
Yeah,
teaches that unless you actually go into a field of leadership. You hear that principle
exactly.
over feelings, or if you go into classes that are built around social emotional learning (SEL), then you're going to hear those type of things. Or if you've read books
Exactly.
by Carol Dweck or Angela Duckworth, that you'll hear that type of lingo. But
Yep.
nonetheless, so it's always come down to principles. And yes, do we falter? Oh yeah, man. There's times where again I have to catch myself. I
Yep.
mean, I'm a man. And I always share this with my wife and other people, even my students. I always express to my students, a great leader can hold his hand and say, yeah, I effed up. And now I'm going to move past that. I've
Yep.
learned. I've effed up. I learned from it. Here's what I'm going to do. And
Exactly.
I've had to explain that even to some of the administrators that I work for. That's the same way. It's great leaders will hold their hand up and say, "Yeah, I messed up. Okay,
Yep.
now I know I fixed it." Or, "Hey, I need help. I need help in this area." Those are great exceptional leaders. And so, yes, that is part of the principle because the greatest principle is whatsoever a man asks, he shall receive. The old time principle. You know what I'm saying? So, like, yeah,
Yep.
those are the greatest things that have helped us this far get through everything that's been happening.
Well, and I think you're right. I think, personal accountability always with leadership, management, and really doing your part in the home as well. And whether you're the man of the house, the woman of the house, or you don't know which one of those you are, you're just you're the leader, right? It
Yeah.
it doesn't,
I'm laughing because we just talked about this Sunday after church. Sunday after
right?
church, we were joking around, we were sitting at the table, we were joking about what you just said. And I'm like, "Hey, am I the leader of the house? Am I the man of the house? I wear the pants, right?" And so she's like, "Yeah, I picked the colors though."
This is true, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
also raising your hand and having personal accountability and really, like you said, saying, "Hey, I effed up, like I messed up," and I mean, look, I have a daughter. She'll be the first one to tell me, "Hey, Dad, but that's not what you said, or that's not what you did," right? Like
yep,
they will
yep,
hold you accountable like no
yep.
other. So it is kind of like having an employee,
Yeah.
in the
Hey,
home, or a student, or client.
but
It's
you
like,
see how that grain, you see how
yeah,
that imprint that you've left in them,
yeah,
they know that.
yeah,
And when they know that, that's a strong affirmation saying, you know what, I've done my job.
yeah,
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like
exactly.
a little trophy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It feels
It's a
good.
stripe on your belt, right? It's
For real. It really is, brother. Yeah, it really is.
That's fantastic, man. So
Yep.
I guess, as we're going further back and you kind of really gave us, a summary of really some of these provoking moments that happen in your life to really kind of catapult you in this direction. I want to talk about, we've talked about coaching a little bit. Let's talk about education a minute
Oh,
because, obviously you being an educated person, I can definitely tell in your conversation, but also you being somebody that wants to give somebody knowledge. It's a powerful thing being a teacher, not just a coach, but being a teacher, being able to actually articulate and influence, a student or somebody listening on the other end. Where did that come from?
I would say it came from Marcus Aurelius, the great emperor. You know, I would say about 5 years ago, I made a promise, and I said, "There's one thing that I want in life, and that's to be very close, if not equal, to Marcus Aurelius, to some of the greats, Aristotle, Socrates. I want to be. If there's anybody that I want to live up to, I want to live up to their standard. I want to get up to that level." And I don't care.
Mm,
That's why I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because I don't want to let too many hours go by where I miss an opportunity because I'd rather sleep. I want to learn. I want to educate. And I'm
mm,
very specific on what I learn. I'm very specific on what information I apply into my home as well as into the home of my own home up here. So
yeah.
I'm very cautious. I don't just go out and buy anything and just bring it into my house. I don't bring in garbage, from the garbage can into my house to eat. I don't do that. And so I think about that a lot. And so when I think about, what I pass on to children, what I pass on to other people, what I pass
Mm,
out to the all caps, all people, it's basic information. It's all information.
Yeah.
It's black and white. There's no color in it. There's nothing. It's black and white. And so it's a great opportunity. Again, Marcus Aurelius was a great emperor who wrote a lot, who was always reading, who was great into philosophy, who always studied. My mentor and teacher, Dr. Eric Thomas, is not as infatuated with learning like I am with my books and so forth. He's got a good array of books, but nonetheless, he was like, you got to get this book. And then when I started reading that particular book, and I'm sure you read it, but Think and Grow Rich, and I started getting other books, right? So that's an entrepreneur's very first book, Think and Grow Rich. And so I've even brought in a lot of those books into my classroom. And, it's all about getting that old time root, that old time knowledge, and then applying it. I always I tell my students at the very beginning, knowledge is not power unless it is applied. So whoever coined that phrase, knowledge is power, was lying to us. It's knowledge is power when it is applied. Then it becomes powerful. And, so like I said, it was Marcus Aurelius that gave me that was the cornerstone or the token of my appreciation and what I do today.
And that's fantastic what you said, because I've said and repeated this over and over and over again, that it's not just about what with all of my coaching clients and the courses that I've created, all it's general knowledge. Like, pick up the phone, type it into Google and see what you come up with. All the information is at your fingertips, but what you're taking in and what you're consuming, that's important what you said, because you're not just bringing garbage into the house. You wouldn't eat out of a garbage can, hey, if you have to, look, I've been there, done that, but what I'm getting at is that, that information and that intake that you're putting into your brain. Now, I'm assuming your family is like this as well. I mean, are they, your kids, are they taking in other things of information as well? Or?
Out of my 3 kids, 2 of them are very good about learning and want to apply information. So they read. They're readers. My first son, he will read certain things. He's more like an article reader. So he'll read different articles and he'll send me some stuff, and he's more about bodybuilding and getting big and So that, and again, and I'm happy because he's applying specific information, as I said earlier, information to his journey.
Exactly.
And so when I look at my other son who's into music, he's specific knowledge in music. He does stuff out and he does read some other different things. When it comes to leadership and when it comes to culture stuff, he'll read stuff like that. My daughter is kind of like me, where she'll read stuff on leadership, she'll learn stuff on public speaking, she'll learn stuff on leadership or on positive energy and psychology and so forth. So she's much like me. She's really a lot like me. Yesterday we jumped and did the like a polar plunge in our community. Like I said, she's just like me. It's almost scary, but good.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I guess for you, your upbringing. I guess let's talk about that for a second. Do you think that because of the challenges that you had and the trauma that you had, obviously you wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be talking probably right now. Who knows in what direction you would have went. But, do you feel as though that kind of equipped with you with these type of abilities that you have to learn and take in knowledge and educate people and coach people through their, processes as well?
Oh, by far, brother. Ultimately, growing up with a single mom, growing up, mentally abused, sexually abused, growing up in foster care, and no one today's number of foster care children in America, and those that are homeless, being homeless, eating. I was just thinking about this the other day when I was shaking, but I was thinking about, I still vividly remember being in Tucson, jumping into garbage cans early in the evening just to get bags of food, like from Dunkin' Donuts, and pull that out, put it into a wagon, and pull it home. And I like vividly remember those things. Shopping at the Goodwill. I vividly remember all these things, and they're beneficial because, again, one of the things that I've learned is, again, you can forgive but never forget. Forgive Like, I forgive that individual who sexually abused me. I forgive him, and it's powerful. It's when you give over, and like my shirt says, when you give over to the war in your mind, where you start losing, and you either take your life or you let life take you, but in the wrong direction, then you've just given up your whole power.
Yeah.
Life is genuine power from within. And when you tap into that, man, there's no limit. There's absolutely no limit. And so all the things that have happened to me has been the biggest blessing. The biggest blessing. And most people will never look. And I say that with all due respect, but there's a great majority of people who do not see it like that. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, that's fine. But I learned in the process that when you're able to control it, to hone in on it, you can use it for magnificent things.
And it is really harnessing that power, right? Because I think, it's, I was speaking with a fellow coach, and he said, look, I'm sorry that trauma happens, but it does. And, it's no different than anybody else's. It's what you do with it and how you react to that, and what, it's just like knowledge is power, right? It's the same concept. Application. What are you going to do with that? So how are you going to take that as fuel and transform that into something beautiful, right? It's like compost. You take shit, turn it into flowers, right? And, and that's powerful, what you said. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a wonderful book by John Gordon, and I was able to go through that book in the first 2 quarters of this year with my students, and they loved it. In fact, a few of them outside of school went ahead and purchased the book for themselves in their home. And this year was probably the number one in 2 quarters. We're not even done with the year, but this is the most that I've ever given out books. Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. Dr. Spencer Johnson, like all these books. And I've always, and I write the books, and I tell the kids, let this be the very first book to the books to come for your library of knowledge. And I always add that into their book. And the reason why I'm telling you is because that book by John Gordon, Energy Bus, is something that we brought into our school to really vamp and bring in the culture in our school, because I've been there for 5 years and there's really never been a set stone of culture. And so it's always been about this year is about positive learning, how we can reinforce anything that we want to do with positive learning. And so what you just said right now, when you're on the bus and you're the owner of your bus, you understand which direction you're going, and you have the biggest window of vision of where you're going, and you have all kinds of seats to allow people to on your bus. You just don't want your bus to be occupied with negative people.
Yeah. And that's so fantastic what you said, because, when you allow people in, and, it's really hard if you're a good person by nature, right? If you're a social person, you like to be around people. It's real easy to be well liked by everybody and well respected and all that kind of stuff. But also, what people forget is that, okay, well, that's great that you're helping that person, but by you allowing that person into your space, sometimes it could really negatively affect, right? Like you said, your bus, if you will.
It's contagious.
It really is. And I think they said that, and I don't know if you've heard this before, but there's what, like twice as much power in a negative person that there is in a positive person. Like, you have to really, like, you gotta have 4 or 5, 6 positive people in a circle, right, to really get it moving in a good positive momentum. But it only takes one negative Nancy, right, to drag the whole team down.
That's a fact. That's the old saying is, one bad apple could ruin a bunch, right?
That's right. Could ruin a bunch. Well, I guess I kind of have some questions for you. I mean, I think that, we're kind of running out of time here for a second, but 2 major questions for you. I guess one being, I guess, to people that are non-business owners out there. Okay. So we're not talking business, what is the best piece of advice for you to give them? Okay. And then the second part of the question would be to the business owners, I guess, with business, you running your business before in a a horrible climate, right? We've all had to deal with it, but also you being very successful in being able to pivot and move in the right direction in a positive note. What advice do you have for both the, the mom and pop shops and just, the average everyday person?
So from the first question, it's very simple, and I know it's simple, but it's a hard thing to commit to, and that is having a positive mental attitude. A coined phrase that was passed down by W. Clement Stone and Napoleon Hill in a phenomenal book, and it's still probably available on Amazon. I grabbed the very first edition 5 years ago, and it took almost a month, 2 months to get it from the UK, but nonetheless, I bought one of the very first editions of the book, and the thing that I've learned, 5 years ago was having a positive mental attitude, how to cultivate a positive mental attitude, and then how to arrive at every single day with a positive mental attitude. It didn't matter if it was 3 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning. It didn't matter if it was 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, but getting 5 hours of sleep and stubbing your toe and still having a positive mental attitude about it. Or somebody cutting you off at Starbucks or any other mom and pop place, you were able to have a positive mental attitude about it, right? So cultivating a positive mental attitude for the personal being.
Yeah.
What it does to again, we talked about that negative attitude, the power of a positive attitude, and so forth. And there's a lot of research right now going on about that. Dr. Martin Siegelman out of Pennsylvania, phenomenal doctor who really coined the phrase back in 1980. But nonetheless, it's magnificent when you start setting and cultivating and building your attitude in a positive direction, what it does to your people. It does not just your home, but also the people you work with, right? And then when it comes to the business owner, that same category transfers over. And here's why. Is because we know today, especially today, this time period in our country and around the world, people have a negative attitude about life, about where their country's going, about their home, about their marriage, about their kids. I mean, the list goes on. The list is bigger than the positive list, right? And so again, cultivating a positive mental attitude in a work environment takes coaches like you and I to come in, collaborate with them, show them some strategies, show them some methods, show them some tips, show them some advantages of, again, cultivating that. And then come in frequently. That way there's consistency.
Yeah.
You see, a lot of businesses, and we know this for a fact, and Pew Research has done multiple researches on this, but there are $380 billion that are lost in lost productivity because of negative attitude. Because people they have a negative attitude, so the customer service sucks, and so on and so forth. But when people come in with an optimistic, positive mental attitude, the productivity is high. I mean, look at Amazon. You look at Google, you look at their next level of people. They always have a great time of energy. And that energy is so genuine, and you can tap into it, and you can charge all your electronic devices. That's how much energy is flowing. And so again, thriving in a positive attitude, both in the home as well as in the business. And when you can link both of those up, when you can plug those, you can go from here to Chicago and still run the same frequency. It's amazing. So that's my biggest advice to any, again, homeowner,
and I guess,
business
owner. So let me ask you this then, because there's probably some people that are listening and being like, okay, I've heard this before, right? Like Eric Thomas talks about it, Ed Milet talks about it, Tony Robbins talks about it. Like nobody doesn't talk about having a positive attitude. What do you do when you feel that it's not the positive attitude? So because whether it's business, it's the leader and he or she is allowing that energy to take place, first of all. So it always starts at the beginning with that leadership role. That in any business, but even as a person, how do you turn that frown upside down? What do you do? Like for yourself personally, I guess that would be the question. What do you do when you feel your attitude is maybe sliding in the wrong direction?
Consult, call somebody, text them. Hey, this is how I'm feeling. I think ultimately it boils down to having great accountable partners friends,
Hmm.
acquaintances, people that, again, that support you. But you text, you call them. There's been times where I've even text Dr. Eric Thomas, hey, I need your prayer on this. Or, hey, what do you think about? Am I overlooking this, or am I overthinking this? Because
Yeah.
I've overthought certain situations or circumstances, and I've had to go back. Hey, babe, what do you think about this? I'm overthinking
Yeah.
it. Hey, babe, this is what's going on. Okay, cool. And then again, just getting, and what I've always thought, this is exactly how my mind thinks. But if I get more than 3 individuals that either will text me or will send something, or a student that will come by and give me something, and it changes the whole momentum, then I know that there's a bigger hand at work, that it's not just me. So when like, let's just say, example, 2 weeks ago, having the worst 3 days that I've had in a very long time. But it was all right. Here's why. Because that first moment where I started feeling deep down, like, damn, I hate this. I hate everything. Can't stand this. My wife texted me. I didn't text her because I didn't text her at lunch. She already texted me. Hey, babe, just want to let you know you're doing a good job. Thank you so much. Whoa. And then boom, later on, a colleague comes by and says, hey, thank you so much for that recommendation of that book. That book has helped me out so much. I'm like, whoa. And then a student comes by and says, here, I want to give you my graham crackers. And I'm like, just little things like that, the little
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
It's those little things that I go, okay,
Powerful.
there's 3 right there. Boom. It is
Yeah.
powerful. It's magnificent. And it changes the momentum. So the other 2 days were not so bad. I started looking at the good and started finding, again, the good in every little single thing. And even today, students and colleagues and people around the community are like, how the hell do you have so much energy? Why? How is that you could wake up at 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock and only have 5 hours of sleep? That makes no sense. I don't know how you do that. No, it's just practice. You know, the
Right.
old saying, practice makes perfect. No, practice
100%.
makes what? Practice makes permanent.
Yeah.
Permanent.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
becomes permanent. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you practice, it becomes permanent. Not perfection, but permanent.
Yeah.
And so again, I just use that example because again that does tie into to the conversation, because that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened a few days ago. So it was epic. It was an epic
Yeah. You
moment.
know, those things come up more than what I think people allow in to the world, right? Like they allow into their space because they don't see them. Because you were focused on, obviously, hey, struggling days. We all have them, I mean, I could tell you probably a million stories to where I literally would wake up, stub my toe, and hit my knee, and then and it totally changed me sideways. But I also know the physical part of that. Like,
Yeah.
I know if I wake up on the wrong side of the bed. I know if I wake up in a pissy mood, right? And
Right.
then I hammer it out. Like I eliminate.
Yeah.
I go right to gratitude. I go right to kicking my own ass. I lower my
Yes.
anxiety. I work out.
Yes.
I make sure I don't jam a bunch of coffee down. Like,
Yeah.
I play that game with myself. So, but I'm glad that you said that, because it's important for people to realize that it doesn't always happen when you want it to happen, right? But if you're constantly looking for that positive vibe and you're having that control, because that's a control thing, right? You choose to be positive,
Yeah.
or choose to be negative,
Well, you also think about it like this. I can't control the external environment, but I can
Exactly.
control my internal environment. And when
That's
you
right.
can literally hone in, again, what's the old quote? He who masters himself is more mightier than anything else on
That's
planet
right.
Earth.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of principle to that.
That is so fantastic, man. Look, I mean, you and I could probably talk for hours here, but we got to get these people off the line. I'm going to have you stick around just for a moment. I really appreciate you being on. Where can people find you? Before we cut the
Oh
live
man,
feed, where can they find you? Where's the quickest, easiest place?
more than likely, you could always find me on Facebook. Facebook is probably the most central location for anybody to find anybody today. Outside of that, you can find me on TikTok, and you can Google my name, and you'll find me, Coach Frank Sagasta. You'll find me there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's multiple ways. I have my own blog and so forth. So I do a lot of different things. When I find time to do
Awesome.
a blog, I'll do a blog. If I find time to do a podcast, I'll do a podcast. It's just, yeah, I'm everywhere.
Well, that's fantastic. Obviously we're going to have to do definitely a number 2 or a part 2 to this, and,
Okay.
collab on some things to help out many people. But I definitely appreciate you being on. Thank you so much for being our
Thank you, brother.
guest. Everybody that's listening, look, if you love this podcast, reach out to Coach. He's awesome. I've been following him for a while since I heard his story, and it's just, it's always a pleasure. I always am, I take notes like a madman. So I'm always taking notes from this guy. I already had things that I wanted to ask you because it's so inquisitive meeting, awesome people like yourself. So, definitely keep fighting the good fight. And everybody that's listening, look, if you love this podcast, if you love this episode, you know what to do. Subscribe, leave us a note, leave us a review, follow us, share it, whatever we got to do, so that way we can promote positive change in people and, of course, your peak performance as well. We'll talk to you soon.